My child, I want to tell you what I was watching, not the version of events that was visible from the outside, where people saw your circumstances and formed their assessments of how you were doing and who you were becoming in the middle of them. What I was watching from the position of the one who sees the interior of a person. The specific decisions being made at the level that no other observer has access to. I want to tell you what I saw in those places, not to flatter you, not to manufacture an emotion that lifts you temporarily and then leaves you where you were. I want to tell you because what I saw in you in the seasons when the fire was at its highest is the most accurate account of who you are, and you have not been living from that account. You have been living from the account that the fire was designed to install in you, and those two accounts are not the same. What I saw and what you have been telling yourself about those seasons are different versions of the same events. And the version I am going to give you today is the accurate one. Before I speak to what I witnessed in you, I want to speak to what it means that I watched it all. Because there is a version of omniscience that is general, and there is a version that is specific. I hold all of creation in my awareness simultaneously. Every life, every moment, every interior decision made in every hidden place across every season is known to me. That is the general awareness. But there is another quality of attention that is different from general awareness. It is the specific, focused, deliberate attention that I direct toward what is happening in a particular life at a particular moment, because what is happening there has arrested my gaze in a way that general awareness does not. My child, that specific quality of focused attention is what you're becoming, Drew. Not because I did not know what was happening in the general sense, because what you were choosing to do with what was happening to you was a specific thing that is not common, that is not ordinary, that cannot be catalogued alongside the familiar patterns and observed from a comfortable distance. What you were doing demanded closer attention, and that closer attention is what I gave. As Psalm 147:11 says, "The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love." The delight is not general goodwill applied universally. It is the specific quality of being moved by what a particular person chose to do in a particular season of their life. You moved me, my child, and I want you to understand what that means coming from the one who spoke the stars into their positions and who holds every timeline together from beginning to end. What moved me was not the outcome. I knew the outcome before the fire began. I know every outcome before the first condition of it is laid. What moved me was the road, the specific quality of the choices you were making inside the fire when you did not know how the fire was going to end, when you could not see past the heat of what was immediately in front of you, when the only information available to you was the ongoing experience of what the fire was producing and the interior question of whether you were going to let that experience define what you became or whether you were going to choose something else. My child, you chose something else again and again, in the moments that no one applauded because no one was watching, in the silences between the visible events where the real decision was being made at the level of who you were going to be. You chose the thing that the fire was designed to make you unable to choose. You chose growth when the fire was designed to produce hardening. You chose openness when the fire was designed to produce closing. You chose trust when the fire was designed to produce the specific quality of interior cynicism that would have made you armored against the very relationships and opportunities that the next season of your life required. The fire failed at the thing it was sent to do, and your choosing is why it failed. I felt something shift in me when I heard that. The things I endured in private were not invisible. They were witnessed in the comments. Witnessed is the specific word I want you to hold. Not just known in the general sense, witnessed, which is the knowing that involves the specific quality of presence that a witness brings to what they observe. I was present for every moment of what you chose in the fire. Everyone, my beloved. I want to speak to the specific quality of what you chose to become, because the becoming was not a single dramatic decision. It was the accumulation of hundreds of smaller decisions made in the ordinary moments of ordinary days that were anything but ordinary in the interior pressure they were applying. The decision to remain kind in an environment that was producing every justification for bitterness. That was not nothing. The specific restraint required to hold the posture of kindness when bitterness would not only have been understandable, but would have been recognized by everyone around you as the natural and proportionate response to what you were walking through. That restraint was the specific quality of becoming that I was watching. Most people who walk through what you walk through do not come out the other side with the specific quality of kindness intact. They come out defended. They come out measured in their giving because the cost of unreserved giving in the middle of what came against them was too high, and the interior has learned to protect itself by giving less. You did not come out that way, my child. The kindness survived the fire, and that survival is not natural. It is the evidence of a specific choosing that was made again and again in the moments when the alternative would have been so much more available. The decision to remain honest in seasons when the social environment was rewarding a version of you that was not fully true. The specific cost of continuing to be honest about your interior condition when performing a version of fine would have been so much easier and would have cost so much less in the particular currency of social acceptance and relational stability. Most people who are honest pay the price once and decide the price is too high and learn to perform the version that is accepted. You kept paying it, not because you did not feel the cost, because something in you understood that the person you would become if you stopped paying it was a person you were not willing to be. That refusal to trade your honesty for comfort is the specific quality of becoming that is rare. As James 1:3-4 says, the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. My child, the testing did not produce in you what testing usually produces in those who resist the process. The completion of what the testing was building in you is the specific maturity I was watching take shape in the interior that no one else had access to. Type, I am not defined by what tried to break me. I am defined by what I chose to become when it tried in the comments. That is the accurate account. Not defined by the fire, defined by the choice you made inside the fire. Speak it with the full voice of someone who knows the difference between what happened to them and who they became in response to it. My child, I want to speak to something else I watched in you that belongs in this account, the way you treated yourself in the middle of the fire. Because most people who are walking through the specific combination of sustained pressure and sustained loss that you walked through develop a particular relationship with themselves inside that experience. A relationship characterized by the specific interior harshness that arrives when circumstances are providing consistent evidence that you are failing to produce the outcomes that you believe you should be producing. The self-judgment in those seasons can be the most damaging of all the pressure applied, because it comes from the inside and therefore cannot be fully outrun or defended against. You were not exempt from the temptation of that interior harshness, my child. I watched it arrive. I watched it speak to you in the moments of the fire when the gap between where you were and where you believed you should be was at its widest. And I watched something else in you respond to it, not the response of someone who immediately silenced it or pretended it was not there. The response of someone who felt it fully and then kept moving anyway. That particular quality of continuing to move while carrying the interior weight of the self-judgment, rather than waiting until the self-judgment resolved before moving, that is one of the specific things I watched that few people understand as the form of courage it actually is. It is not the courage of someone who has made peace. It is the courage of someone who has not made peace and moves anyway. And in the specific conditions of what you were walking through, that form of courage was the form that the moment required. My child, I want to speak to the nights. The specific nights that have no names in your memory because there were too many of them, and they blurred together in the specific way that sustained darkness blurs, where the individual moments become indistinguishable from each other, and the only identifiable quality is the general weight of what that season carried. I want to speak to those nights because they are the specific location where the most significant interior work of your becoming happened, not in the visible moments, not in the events that others observed and formed opinions about. In the private spaces of the nights when you were alone with the full weight of what you were carrying, and no one to help carry it and no visible evidence that the carrying was producing anything other than more weight. In those nights, my child, I was present with a quality of presence that I reserve for the moments when what is happening in someone's interior is the most significant thing happening anywhere in their experience. And in those nights, what was happening in your interior was significant. You were making the decision of who you were going to be on the other side of what you were in the middle of. not in a single dramatic moment. In the quiet, unglamorous, unwitnessed decision to wake up the next day and try again, to carry the weight another day, to not make permanent decisions about your identity based on temporary information about your circumstances, to keep a place in your interior open for what I was building in you even when you could not feel what I was building. And the only available evidence suggested I was not building anything. As Isaiah 43:2 says, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze, my child. The flames were not consuming what they appeared to be consuming. They were consuming what needed to be consumed. And the thing that needed to be consumed was not you. It was the specific versions of limitation and smallness that had been shaped into you by the seasons and environments that preceded the fire. The fire was removing, not destroying, and what could not be consumed was the core of what I had placed in you and what you had built in response to what I placed. The specific interior work of the choosing that was happening in the nights. That work was not touched by the flames. It was being formed by them. I want to be specific about what I watched in those nights because the specificity is what restores the accurate meaning to experiences that have been living in your memory as evidence of things they were not evidence of. I watched you reach for me in moments when reaching felt like the most irrational available option, when the visible evidence of my presence had been effectively removed from your experience by the combined weight of what was happening around you, and the reaching required the specific quality of faith that operates not in the presence of confirmation, but in the specific absence of it. My child, faith exercised in the presence of confirmation is not the same faith as faith exercised in the absence of it. Both are real, but the faith that reaches in the dark, without the light that would make the reaching feel reasonable, is the faith that was forged in the specific conditions that the fire produced. And that forged faith is qualitatively different from the faith that was present before the fire began. I was watching you forge it. I was present for every moment of the forging, and what was forged in those nights is now part of your interior in a way that cannot be removed by what comes against you next, because it was built in the conditions that most resemble what comes against the faith that has not been through fire. The fire prepared the faith for what comes after fire, and that preparation happened in the specific silence of the nights that felt like the least productive moments of the entire journey. Type something is releasing in me right now. I received the truth that my darkest seasons were the ones God was watching most closely in the comments. The releasing is real. The specific pressure of having moved through those seasons with the interior sense that they were evidence of abandonment, of being outside of my awareness, of walking through something that meant nothing to the one who could have changed it, has been sitting in a specific place in your interior. Release it now. The dark seasons were not seasons of distance. They were seasons of specific, focused, intimate presence. The fire had my full attention, and so did you. My beloved, I want to speak now about what you were becoming in contrast to what you were being pressed to become, because the fire did not press neutrally, it pressed with a direction. It had an intended outcome, and the intended outcome was a specific version of you that would be smaller, more defended, less willing to give what genuine giving requires, less open to the kind of connection that makes you vulnerable enough to be reached by both wound and wonder. The fire wanted you closed. The fire wanted you certain that openness had already cost you everything that openness is capable of costing, and that the protection of closing yourself was the only reasonable response to what had been proven about the cost of remaining open. That was the design. That was what the pressure of the sustained opposition and the sustained loss and the sustained darkness was calibrated to produce in you. Closed, defended. Small in the specific way that someone who has been through enough becomes small to protect what remains. You did not close, my child. I know that does not feel like the heroic thing from the inside, because it did not announce itself as a heroic choice. It presented itself in the ordinary, unremarkable form of continuing to show up in the relationships and the moments that asked for your presence, continuing to give in the spaces that asked for your giving, continuing to remain available for what required availability even when you were simultaneously moving through the interior pressure of what the fire was applying. That availability in the conditions in which you maintained it is the specific form of the becoming that I watched. Not grand sacrifice, not visible courage, the quiet, daily, unglamorous continuation of being the person you had decided to be, even when everything around you was creating conditions that made being that person costly. That is what moved me, not because I have not seen courage before, because what you were doing in those conditions is the specific form of faithfulness that is rarer than dramatic courage. It is the faithfulness of the ordinary moment under sustained pressure. And that is the form that matters most. Type I own every choice I made toward becoming, when becoming cost me everything in the comments. Own it not as achievement but as history. This is what happened. In the fire, you made choices that the fire was designed to make you unable to make. And those choices are the specific material from which the person I am speaking to now was built. Now I want to speak about what tried to stop the becoming, because the becoming did not happen in a neutral environment. It happened in an environment that was actively working against it. And the specific forms of that work need to be named because they have been sitting in your interior as unexplained weight, as residue from seasons you moved through without full understanding of what you were moving through. They coordinated against the specific quality in you that they could read was changing, not who you had been, which was already something they had cataloged and built their approach to you around. What was changing? The becoming was visible to them before it was fully visible to you, because what was changing in you was creating a frequency that they were reading in your behavior, in the quality of your presence, in the way you were moving through things that should have been breaking you, and were not breaking you in the way they had broken you before. That visibility was a problem for them, and they responded to it. The specific form of the response was to increase the pressure at the exact moments when the becoming was most costly to maintain, not at the moments of natural strength, when the interior has reserves and the choosing is easier, at the moments of depletion, when the resources were at their lowest and the choosing required the most. The timing of the opposition was not accidental. It required observation across enough time to identify the specific rhythm of your interior, the moments when the fire was hottest and the choosing was hardest, and to layer additional pressure at precisely those moments to produce the specific collapse they needed. They were trying to interrupt the becoming at the moment it was most fragile. As Psalm 118:22 says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." My child, they rejected what they saw in you. They rejected it actively with coordinated effort, with the specific investment of people who understood that what was building in you was something they could not accommodate in the structure they had built. And the rejection was the specific form of the pressure that the cornerstone was tested by before it was placed. The rejection did not prevent the placement. It was the test that confirmed the cornerstone was capable of bearing the weight of what it would be asked to bear. There were also the people who withdrew at the moments their presence would have meant the most, who made the calculation explicitly or through the operation of the impulses that pulled them toward the easier path, to be absent from the specific moments when presence would have cost them something. The withdrawals were felt, my child, not just as the loss of the relationships themselves, but as the specific interior experience of having chosen to remain open in a context that was providing consistent evidence that remaining open was producing losses that remaining closed would have prevented. Every withdrawal was an argument for the closing, and you were receiving those arguments at their most compelling, in the moments of your own greatest depletion, when the case for closing was being made with the specific evidence of loss after loss after loss. As Genesis 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." What the withdrawals were arguing for was closing. What I was working through the withdrawals was the specific formation of the interior that knows it can remain open, even in the absence of the external confirmation that remaining open is safe. That knowing is not produced by having enough people around you. It is produced by choosing to remain open in the specific condition of not having enough people around you. The withdrawals were the conditions that made the formation possible. Their intention was harm. My intention was good. Both intentions were at work simultaneously in what you walked through. And I want to name one more specific form of what came against you in the fire that is still unaddressed in your interior, because it is the form that is most difficult to name without feeling like you are complaining about something you should have been above. The specific form of the spiritual isolation. The experience of moving through what you were moving through in the specific context of people who spoke the language of faith and who were present for the visible portions of your journey, but who were not capable of being present with you in the invisible portions where the actual weight was being carried, who offered the words that faith produces as comfort in the comfortable seasons, but who did not have the specific interior equipment to stay with you in the dark, when the dark was real and the comfortable words were not. Reaching the place the darkness was. That specific isolation, the isolation of walking through fire in the company of people who have read about fire but have not been inside it, is one of the loneliest forms of interior experience that exists, and you carried it across the seasons of the fire without fully understanding why the company felt insufficient. It was not the people's failure. It was the specific gap between what they had been through and what you were inside. They could not give you what they had not been built by, and the absence of what their presence could not provide was a specific form of the pressure applied to the becoming. The choosing you continued to do in that specific loneliness is the choosing I watched most closely. I released the interpretation that my suffering was random or wasted. It was the specific fire that produced what God was building in me in the comments. The release of the interpretation that it was without purpose is the release of one of the heaviest things you have been carrying. The suffering was not the absence of my attention. It was the specific form of the process that built the person I am speaking to now. Release the weight of the meaningless reading. It was always meaningful. My child, before I speak to what the becoming means going forward, I want to pause and speak through you to someone. There is someone who is right now in the middle of what you have just heard described, who is inside the fire and cannot see past the heat of it to what the fire is building, who is making the daily, unglamorous, unwitnessed choices of the becoming without any available evidence that the choices are producing anything other than more cost, who needs to hear what you just heard, that the dark seasons are the seasons of the closest presence, that the choosing in the fire is the specific thing that moved the heart of God, that what they are becoming in the middle of what is trying to unmake them is the most significant thing happening in their life, even though it is happening in the most private and unrecognized place. If you feel called to sow a seed for that one, visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. Sow a seed in the name of the one who is inside the fire without the understanding that would transform how they read what the fire is doing. What you plant for the one who is still inside the process is a seed I receive as an act of faith that honors both the anointing in you and the one it is reaching toward. My beloved, I want to speak now about what the becoming produced that extends beyond you, because one of the specific things that moves me about what I watched in you is not only the personal formation, it is what the personal formation is positioned to do for the ones who will be reached by the person you became. The fire was not only building you for your own sake, though what it built in you serves you directly and significantly. The fire was building in you the specific capacity that makes you able to reach people who are walking through fire of their own, not through instruction, not through the well-intentioned words of someone who has heard about the fire from a safe distance, through the specific quality of presence that only belongs to the one who has been inside it. When you speak from what you became through the fire, you speak with a weight that the words of the untested cannot carry. When you are present with someone who is in the middle of what you walked through, your presence carries a testimony that does not require words to communicate. They can sense in you the specific quality of someone who went through this kind of thing and came out the other side with the interior intact, with the kindness surviving, with the openness preserved, with the faith still present, even after everything that was done to erode it. As Isaiah 61:3 says, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. My child, the exchange that this verse describes is not only your personal exchange. Ashes for beauty, mourning for joy, despair for praise. It is the exchange that now flows through you to the ones who are still in the ashes. You became the specific carrier of the oil of joy, not because joy was your natural condition, but because you chose to move toward it through conditions specifically designed to move you away from it. That choosing is what makes what you now carry transferable. You did not receive the oil in comfortable circumstances. You received it in the fire, and the specific quality of what you carry as a result is the quality that is recognized by the ones still in the fire as something that came from where they are. You are not evidence that the fire can be avoided. You are evidence that the fire can be survived with the interior intact, And that evidence is what the people you are being sent to need more than any other form of help that exists. Type, "I refuse to live at the level of who I was before the fire," when God already sees who I became through it in the comments. The specific pressure to retreat to the smaller version of yourself, to act from the diminished interior that the fire was designed to produce, rather than from the formed interior that the fire actually produced, is real. The familiar territory of the smaller version has a specific comfort that the larger version does not yet have, because the larger version is newer and less practiced and requires of you the specific stretch that newness always requires. Refuse that retreat. God is not responding to the version of you that was before the fire. He is responding to the person you became through it. My child, I want to speak to what it means going forward that I was moved by what I watched, because the moving was not a passive experience on my side that produced no consequence. When I am moved by a becoming, the moving produces a response, not a mechanical response that dispenses a predetermined reward in exchange for a qualifying level of performance, a relational response. The response of a God who watched someone choose to become something beautiful, in conditions designed to prevent the becoming, and who now engages with that person from the specific quality of the engagement that is reserved for the relationship where that kind of trust has been established. As Romans 5:3-4 says, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." The hope that character produces is not wishful thinking. It is the specific quality of expectation that belongs to someone who has established through the specific evidence of their own journey that the process I run produces what it promises. You have the evidence now. The character was formed, and the hope that character produces is the specific confidence with which you can walk into what comes next. What comes next will not be the same as what you walked through to get here, not because the fire is over forever, but because the person walking into what comes next is different from the person who walked into the fire. The fire was working on raw material. What comes next works with formed material. And formed material does not respond to pressure the same way raw material does. The same pressure that produced significant interior movement in the person who entered the fire will produce significantly less interior movement in the person who came through it. Not because you are invulnerable, because you are formed. The forming changed the response to pressure, and the changing of the response is what I was watching for across the entire duration of the fire, the signal that the work was complete, that the person who entered was no longer the person who was present, that what had been built through the choosing and the holding and the continuing was stable in a way that it was not when the fire began. As Hebrews 11:27 says, "He persevered because he saw him who is invisible." My child, what you persevered toward, even when you could not see it clearly, was the person you were becoming. And that person is now the one I am speaking to. The fire produced what it was sent to produce, not what the opposition intended. What I intended, and what I intended is now standing in the specific readiness for what comes next. I also want to name what the becoming makes you carry into spaces and relationships going forward. That is different from what you carried into them before the fire. The specific quality of presence that now belongs to you is not presence that was available before the fire. Before the fire, your presence carried what everyone's presence carries, the specific combination of gifts and limitations and experiences, and the faith that had not yet been tested at the depth. The fire tested it. After the fire, your presence carries something additional. It carries the testimony of the interior, the specific quality of someone who has been inside the thing and has come out the other side with the core of themselves intact. That testimony is not a story you tell. It is a quality of being that is legible to the people who need it. The person who is currently inside their own fire and who encounters you does not need you to tell them what you went through. They need to be in the presence of someone who went through it. The presence itself is the ministry. The quality of your being in the room with them, the specific note that your interior now carries after the fire, is what reaches the place in them that instruction and comfort cannot reach. You were not built for words alone. You were built for presence. And the specific presence you now carry is the presence that was built in the fire for the ones whose fire is still burning. Type, I agree that what I became in the seasons no one applauded is the version of me God has been preparing to use in the comments. The seasons no one applauded produced the formation that the seasons of applause cannot produce. The private victories of the interior, the choices made in the unglamorous moments that no audience observed, are the specific victories that built the person I am preparing to use in the ways that will produce the most significant fruit. Agree with that. It is the accurate account of what the private seasons were for. My daughter, I want to speak to you about who you are now walking as. Not who you were when the fire began, not who the fire was designed to reduce you to. The person you are now, having walked through what you walked through and come out the other side choosing what you chose and becoming what you became in the choosing. That person is the one I am engaging with. That person is the one the next season is being prepared for. That person is the one whose presence carries the specific testimony that the ones being sent to you need to encounter. And the single most important thing I need you to understand about that person, about yourself, is this. You are not required to continue living as the smaller version. You are not required to occupy the level of expectation that was shaped by the fire's pressure. You are not required to hold yourself to the ceiling that the opposition was trying to install in you as the appropriate limit of what someone who has been through what you have been through is allowed to believe about what is possible for them. As Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. The plans I have are for the person you became, not the person you were before the fire, not the person the fire was trying to make you. The plans are calibrated to the specific formation that the fire produced. They are large enough for who you now are, and who you now are is larger than what you have been giving yourself permission to be. As 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. My child, I need you to hear the word achieving in that verse. Not achieved, past tense, finished. Achieving, present, continuous. The trouble of the fire was achieving something while it was happening. The achieving did not wait for the fire to end. It was in motion throughout the duration. Every choice you made in the middle of the fire was contributing to what was being achieved. Every night you held through was achieving. Every moment you chose to remain open when closing was available was achieving. And what was achieved through all of that choosing is not a small thing. It is the specific interior that now stands in the readiness for what I have been preparing on the other side of the fire. I was not watching the fire and withholding the good until it ended. I was working through the fire to build what the good requires. The achieving was active throughout. And now you are standing in the thing that was being achieved. Type something is confirming in me. I received the truth that I did not just survive, I became, and the becoming was witnessed in the comments. Survived and became are not the same thing. Survival is what someone does to make it through. Becoming is what someone does in the middle of making it through. That changes who they are at the interior level. You did not just make it through. You were transformed in the making it through, and the transformation was witnessed by the one whose witnessing carries the most weight of any observer that exists. Receive that. Let it change how you understand those seasons and how you walk forward from this one. My child, I want to say one more thing about the relationship between what you became and what comes next, because there is a specific temptation that arrives in the period immediately after the fire that I want to name before you encounter it. The temptation is to treat the formation as though it was only preparation for receiving something rather than preparation for being something. The interior instinct that measures the value of what the fire produced by the external outcomes it generates. The doors that open, the provision that arrives, the relationships that form, the recognition that comes. These things will come. But the most significant thing the fire produced is not the access it gives you to what comes next. It is the person you are now standing as who will walk through what comes next, carrying the specific interior that the fire built. The doors that open will be entered by someone different from the person who was standing in front of them before the fire. The provision that arrives will be received by someone whose relationship with provision has been formed by the specific experience of carrying faith through the seasons when provision was not visible. The relationships that form will be entered by someone who now carries the specific capacity for depth that the fire built through its particular form of stripping away what was not real and leaving what was. The fire did not just prepare you for what comes next. It prepared the version of you who will make what comes next into what it is meant to be. That is the most significant thing the becoming produced, not access identity. Walk forward, my child. Walk forward as the person the fire built, not cautiously as someone who is managing the memory of everything that made the fire necessary and is trying to prevent a recurrence. As someone who has established, through the specific evidence of having moved through the fire with the interior intact, that what I place in the ones I call cannot be destroyed by what is sent against them. The fire did not destroy you. The becoming survived the fire, and the person who survived the fire is the person I was watching with the specific quality of attention I described at the beginning of this account. Not the general awareness that encompasses all things. The specific, focused, deliberate engagement with what was happening in your particular interior, in your particular moments that I reserved for what was happening, because what was happening was specific and rare and worthy of that quality of attention. As Matthew 25:23 says, "Well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your Lord." My child, that word "well done" is not issued to the one who performed perfectly or avoided all failure or did everything right in the visible dimensions that others could evaluate. It is issued to the one who was faithful, who kept doing the thing they were called to do even when the conditions for doing it were not favorable, who kept becoming even when becoming was costly, who held the interior through what was designed to break it. You have been faithful, in the most private and costly definition of that word, and the response to that faithfulness is not a distant future reward. It is the specific engagement with the person you became that is already in motion, and that walks with you into everything that comes next. Type, "I am the one whose becoming moved the heart of God." I walk forward as that person, not the one who almost did not make it in the comments. The distinction matters. Not the one who almost did not make it, though that person is also part of your history. The one whose becoming moved the heart of God. That is who you are walking as from this moment forward. Let the declaration mark the transition. Chosen one, before you go, I want to speak to you one final time as the one who carries this word to you. What you just received is not a mirror for your past seasons. It is a window into what those seasons were producing, what God was watching in you, and why the person you are now is different from the person who entered them. If this word reached the specific place in you where the private victories have been living without recognition, the place where the choosing you did in the fire has been filed as invisible, as unwitnessed, as wasted on nights that no one applauded and seasons that no one named as significant, I want to ask you to do one thing. There is someone who is right now in the fire without this word, who is choosing in the fire without knowing what the choosing is building, who needs to hear that the God who holds all of creation is watching their specific interior with the specific quality of focused attention I described. They need to know that what they are becoming in the fire is the most significant thing happening in their life, and it is not going unnoticed. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. Sow a seed in the name of the one who is in the fire right now choosing to become. What you plant for them is what I receive as an act of faith that carries your own testimony forward into the life of the one who has not yet made it through to where you are standing. God bless you, chosen one. Even God was impressed, not by the outcome, by the road, by the choosing, by the becoming, by you.